I never thought a plane ticket could change my life until he handed me one. First class, champagne and crystal flutes, silk sheets, a personal flight attendant who smiled like he knew all my secrets, and a seat that felt softer than any bed I'd ever slept in. He whispered, "Tonight, you'll see the world like never before." I laughed, thinking it was a fantasy come true. The city lights below glittered like diamonds. The noise of the world disappeared, and for a few hours, I was untouchable. Lavish dinners at midnight, champagne that tasted sweeter than love, gifts that would make anyone jealous. He spoiled me like I was the only woman who had ever lived. But when we landed, everything changed. The smiles, the gifts, the luxury, they vanished. And suddenly, I had nothing. Not a word, not a warning, not even a goodbye. Just an empty hotel room and a debt I never knew I'd signed up for. And that's when I realized he never loved me, not really. He loved the idea of control, of power, of watching someone like me fall completely for him, then watching me crash when he was gone. You'll want to hear every detail, every luxurious moment, every betrayal, because what comes next will shock you in ways you can't imagine. Subscribe to this channel and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I want to know how far this story reaches. The first text he sent me was casual, too casual for what was about to unfold. "Pack light, I'll take care of everything." I smiled, my heart racing. He had always been mysterious, always precise, always dangerous in a way I didn't notice at first. The airport greeted me like a palace, a private terminal. Valets in crisp uniforms waiting to take our bags to a jet that gleamed like a silver arrow. I was nervous but thrilled. Never had I flown first class before, never seen such indulgence. The flight attendant bowed slightly, welcoming me as if I belonged to royalty. He handed me a silk blanket, a pillow embroidered with my initials. "Make yourself comfortable," he said, his eyes holding a hidden amusement, as if he knew this night would be unforgettable. And it was. The flight itself was a blur of decadence. Champagne poured from crystal bottles, the corks popping like tiny fireworks in my ears, lobster tails on silver platters, dark chocolate truffles that melted like whispers in my mouth. I thought, maybe this was it. Maybe this is what life was meant to feel like. He leaned close, and I could smell his expensive cologne. "You deserve this," he murmured, brushing my hair back. The way he touched me made me forget my own name. I didn't question anything, not the tickets, not the gifts, not the sudden whirlwind of luxury surrounding us. When the jet landed, the world below sparkled like a treasure chest. Limousines lined the runway, engines purring, waiting to take us to a hotel I couldn't even imagine existing. The lobby smelled of roses and leather, the marble floors reflecting chandeliers that looked like they were stolen from a royal palace. Every detail screamed wealth, power, perfection. And yet, as I followed him through gilded corridors, a tiny voice whispered in my mind, "Is this real or just a dream someone else is controlling?" We entered our suite, a penthouse overlooking the city skyline, floor-to-ceiling windows, a bed that could fit 3 people, a bathtub big enough to host a party. He gestured toward a table stacked with gifts, designer handbags, watches that cost more than a car, diamonds sparkling like tiny suns. He smiled and, for a moment, I did. I felt like I'd been chosen for something extraordinary. Then came the dinner, an intimate affair on the balcony, silver cutlery, crystal glasses, food that made me forget hunger. The city lights reflected in his eyes, making him seem untouchable. He told me stories of his travels, his successes, the companies he had built over continents, and I listened, wide-eyed, thinking, could anyone live like this? Could anyone be like this? It was intoxicating. Every laugh, every smile, every brush of his hand against mine made me more entangled, more dependent on his presence. I didn't see the warning signs, the small lies he told about business deals, the subtle boasts about power. I thought they were charming. By the end of the night, I was utterly captivated. I didn't just like him, I needed him. And in that moment, I didn't even question the whirlwind of wealth and indulgence that surrounded us. I was blinded by the luxury, the attention, the thrill. And yet, somewhere deep in the back of my mind, a whisper remained. This feels too perfect. It has to end. Little did I know, it would end far sooner than I imagined, and in a way I could never recover from. The first morning after that magical night, I woke up to sunlight spilling across silk sheets, golden rays bouncing off crystal glasses on the nightstand. He was gone, but a note sat neatly folded beside my champagne glass. Breakfast in an hour. Dress nicely. It sounded ordinary, but in our whirlwind of wealth and luxury, ordinary had become intoxicating. I showered in the marble bathroom, steam rising around me, while gold-plated fixtures gleamed like the world itself had been built for me. Towels softer than clouds wrapped me in warmth. I didn't question anything, not his absence, not the perfection of it all. I was still drunk on the night before. Breakfast was served on the balcony. A private chef had flown in, flames dancing under silver pans, exotic fruits arranged like jewels, caviar glistening in tiny mother-of-pearl bowls. I ate, laughing at the jokes he texted me, feeling like I was living a fantasy so lush, so intoxicating, it could never be real. By the third day, the whirlwind had me completely. We flew to Paris on a private jet, a flight that felt like a mini palace in the clouds. He ordered Dom Perignon at 30,000 feet. The stewardess served delicate pastries shaped like roses. I felt untouchable, invincible, and more in love than I'd ever been. He bought me gifts that made my head spin. A diamond bracelet that felt heavier than my own pulse. Shoes worth more than my apartment. A handbag embossed with gold letters. A limited edition I couldn't even find in stores. And every time I looked at him, he smiled as if he knew I had fallen entirely. Hook, line, and sinker. But behind that smile, there was a flicker of something I couldn't read. A shadow just at the edge of his eyes. I didn't notice at first. I wanted to believe in the dream. I wanted the luxury, the attention, the world he was giving me. Paris nights were the most intoxicating. Candlelit dinners atop skyscraper terraces with the Eiffel Tower glittering below us. He whispered about future trips, yachts in Monaco, villas in the Maldives, private concerts in Rome. Each promise felt real. Each kiss felt eternal. Yet there were cracks, small things I ignored. A call he took in the corner of the room, hushed, urgent. A credit card swipe he didn't explain. A sudden disappearance in the middle of a shopping spree. Each moment I chalked up to business, to secrecy, to the life of a millionaire. I wanted to trust him completely. I needed to. But the more he showered me with gifts, the more I felt a quiet unease. It was subtle, like a chill under the silk sheets, like a perfume that didn't belong. Sometimes I'd catch him staring at me, not with love, but with calculation. And yet, when he smiled, all doubts melted away. By the fifth day, I was utterly under his spell. We dined at private villas rented across the French Riviera, cocktails in hand, velvet chairs, champagne fountains, and the kind of food that could make anyone faint from delight. He whispered, "I want the world to see you as mine." And I believed him, believed in the magic, the fantasy, the illusion of being loved by someone untouchable. Then came the trip to Monte Carlo. The yacht waited, gleaming in the harbor, all white and gold, larger than some of the buildings on land. He handed me a silk robe and I stepped aboard, feeling like royalty. Waiters in crisp black uniforms handed me flutes of champagne. The sun burned gold on my skin. I laughed. I felt complete. And that night, under the stars, he told me he loved me. "I've never felt this way before," he said, holding my hand, the diamond bracelet flashing in the moonlight. My heart swelled. For the first time in my life, I thought I had it all. Luxury, love, adventure. I didn't see it coming. I couldn't see the trap closing, because the truth was already there, hiding behind the wealth, the champagne, the silk, the diamonds. The whispers of betrayal had started the moment I boarded that first-class flight, but I was too blinded by the glamour to notice, too intoxicated by the dream of him. And just as I was starting to believe in forever, the first hint of disaster struck. A phone call I wasn't meant to hear. A conversation I stumbled upon as I walked to our suite. Him speaking to someone about debts, contracts, things I didn't understand but felt like a threat. The words hit me like ice. She's getting everything for now, but we can't let her keep it. My heart froze. Every luxury item, every gift, every indulgence flashed before my eyes in a new light. Was it real, or was I just another piece in a game I didn't know I was playing? That night, I lay in a bed bigger than my entire apartment, staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of it. The glittering world outside the window suddenly felt cold, alien. The diamonds on my wrist felt heavy, oppressive, almost mocking. The champagne in my glass no longer sparkled. It just reflected a luxury I might never truly own. The next morning, I woke to silence. The kind of silence that feels heavy, almost oppressive. No messages, no calls, no laughter echoing from the balcony. Just the faint hum of air conditioning, the glittering city below, and the weight of diamonds on my wrist that suddenly felt like chains. I found a note on the pillow. Out, back soon. No signature, no explanation. My stomach twisted. Normally, I would have been thrilled by the mystery. Today, it felt like a warning. I wandered through the suite, touching the silk sheets, the gold-plated fixtures, the walls adorned with abstract paintings that cost more than my car. Everything screamed wealth, but now it whispered something else. Loneliness, deception, a luxury built not for me, but for him to show off, to control, to manipulate. The private chef knocked, placing breakfast on the table. Truffles, fresh pastries, exotic fruits arranged in patterns I couldn't have imagined in my dreams. But I couldn't eat. Each bite felt like betrayal. Every indulgence now carried a hidden question. Was any of this real? Later, I decided to explore the city alone. My heels clicked against marble floors as I walked past ornate mirrors reflecting my face, a face once lit by excitement, now shadowed by doubt. Even the sun seemed brighter than it should have been, mocking me with its warmth. I called him, no answer. I texted, no reply. My panic began to rise like a tide. I had been swept into a world so extravagant, so intoxicating, that I had let myself believe in perfection. And perfection, I realized, could vanish faster than a heartbeat. The evening brought a new kind of terror. A friend he had introduced me to casually, the one I had trusted because he smiled when they entered, sent me a text. "You don't know what you've stepped into. Be careful." My heart stopped. I tried calling him again. Silence. That night, I returned to our suite, hoping to find him waiting with his charming smile, a plan, a reason. Instead, I found a half-packed bag, a signed check for an extravagant amount, and a card with one word, goodbye. I collapsed onto the bed, the diamonds on my wrist cold against my skin. The gifts, the trips, the yachts, they were all gone. Or at least they no longer belonged to me. Every luxury I had thought was mine now felt like a cruel joke. And then the calls started. Bank statements, overdue bills, emails threatening collections. I hadn't realized he had tied my name, my presence, my existence to debts I never understood. Luxury had become a trap, a gilded cage, and I was trapped inside it. I tried to reach him, my voice shaking as I left messages, emails, texts, but it was as if he had vanished. The glittering world he had shown me, the champagne, the silk, the yachts, had been a lie, a carefully constructed illusion to make me dependent, to make me fall completely, and then leave me with nothing. The first pangs of anger hit me, not just at him, but at myself, at how completely I believed in the perfection he sold me. I had ignored the tiny cracks, the shadows behind his smiles. I had been blinded by diamonds, by silk, by champagne that tasted like heaven, but now tasted like ash. I walked to the balcony and looked down at the city below. The lights that had dazzled me just days ago now seemed distant, cold, and indifferent. I felt exposed, vulnerable, and utterly alone. Yet, even in that despair, a tiny spark ignited. Anger, disbelief, a question. How could someone live like this and leave devastation in their wake? I knew then that this story wasn't over, not by a long shot. Because what he had done wasn't just betrayal, it was a performance, a meticulously crafted game designed to leave me shattered. And I needed to understand it, needed to uncover it, needed to survive it. I spent the night going through every message, every receipt, every gift. Each one told a story, one I hadn't wanted to read. He hadn't just left me with nothing, he had left a trail I was determined to follow. By morning, I had made a decision. I wouldn't let him vanish without consequences. The luxury, the gifts, the trips, they were gone. But my dignity, my mind, and my will to uncover the truth, those were still mine. And so began the hunt, the investigation into a man who had built a kingdom of lies, a world of opulence, and then discarded me like I was nothing. Every flight, every hotel, every gift became a clue, and as I pieced it together, I realized how dangerous the game had been and how high the stakes were for me to survive it. The next morning, reality hit me like a freight train. The city outside my hotel suite sparkled as if mocking me, each light a reminder of the life I had glimpsed and lost. I had been seduced by silk sheets, champagne, and diamonds, but now they felt like chains, weighing me down with their false promise of security. I opened my emails and froze. Bank notices, past due bills, credit card statements showing charges I had no memory of making, luxury items shipped in my name, all returned, or worse, sold. He had tied me to debts I never agreed to. Every private jet, every five-star hotel, every exotic dinner now had a hidden cost, and I was the one left to pay. I thought about calling him. I dialed the number 100 times, each ring pounding in my ears like a countdown. No answer, voicemail, silence. I felt the panic rising, burning in my chest. My stomach knotted. All the champagne, the silk, the yachts, it had been a trap, and the truth was, I had no way out. I went through the suite, the marble floors reflecting the chaos of my mind. The gifts, the diamonds, the designer bags, the watches were gone. Even the personalized stationery he had given me was missing. Every token of the lavish life he had promised had been stripped away, leaving nothing but emptiness. And then came the call that shattered the last remnants of trust. A man's voice, cold and distant. "We need the payment by tomorrow, no extensions." I couldn't believe it. The debts were real. He had left me financially ruined in a world I didn't understand, surrounded by luxury I would never touch again. I remembered the yacht in Monte Carlo, the champagne fountain, the private chef, the silk robe he had handed me with that sly, knowing smile. Every indulgence now felt like a weapon. He had played me, drawn me into a life of extravagance, then vanished, leaving me to face the consequences. I spent hours retracing my steps, looking for clues, for anything I could use. Receipts, credit card statements, travel itineraries, they were all a labyrinth of deceit. He had covered his tracks so meticulously that every indulgence, every luxurious touch felt like a calculated move in a game I didn't even know I was playing. The emotional toll was immense. I had been so enraptured by the fantasy that I had ignored the warning signs, the whispered calls, the hurried disappearances, the way he smiled just slightly too smug when I looked at him with love in my eyes. I had been blinded by first-class luxury, and it had cost me everything. As the sun set over the city, I sat alone on the balcony staring at the horizon. The sky was a burning orange, beautiful yet indifferent. I felt a storm inside me, grief, anger, disbelief. A question: how could someone live like this and leave devastation in their wake? I knew then that this story wasn't over, not by a long shot, because what he had done wasn't just betrayal, it was a performance, a meticulously crafted game designed to leave me shattered, and I needed to understand it, needed to uncover it, needed to survive it. I spent the night going through every message, every receipt, every gift. Each one told a story, one I hadn't wanted to read. He hadn't just left me with nothing, he had left a trail I was determined to follow. By morning, I had made a decision. I wouldn't let him vanish without consequences. The luxury, the gifts, the trips, they were gone. But my dignity, my mind, and my will to uncover the truth, those were still mine. And so began the hunt, the investigation into a man who had built a kingdom of lies, a world of opulence, and then discarded me like I was nothing. Every flight, every hotel, every gift became a clue, and as I pieced it together, I realized how dangerous the game had been and how high the stakes were for me to survive it. The first thing I learned after he left me with nothing was this: luxury can be a lie. Every diamond bracelet, every champagne flute, every silk pillow had been a carefully constructed mask, and behind that mask, he had left me exposed, vulnerable, and desperate. I spent days combing through every detail of our whirlwind life: credit card statements, flight itineraries, hotel receipts, gift invoices. Everything pointed to him, yet nothing made sense. It was like chasing shadows. Every indulgence had a hidden price, every gift a hidden agenda. The more I dug, the more I realized how meticulous he had been. Nothing had been left to chance. And then I noticed it, a pattern. The hotels were registered under shell companies, the flights under different names, the gifts purchased with temporary cards, only to vanish from any traceable account later. He had built a world of extravagance that existed solely to trap me, to make me believe in a fantasy he controlled entirely. It was intoxicating to uncover. I felt a mix of rage and awe. Rage that I had been manipulated so thoroughly. Awe at the cunning it must have taken to orchestrate such an illusion. But with every revelation, my anger grew, fueling a determination I hadn't known I possessed. I decided I needed allies, people who understood the world of wealth, luxury, and deception. I contacted a private investigator, someone discreet but experienced in tracking the movements of the wealthy and unscrupulous. I gave them the scraps I had, the addresses of the hotels, the company names, the receipts. I needed to see him for what he really was. The investigation revealed more than I expected. He was a phantom in the luxury world, a man who had lived extravagantly without truly owning anything. Yachts registered under shell companies, private jets rented for appearances, villas booked for nights, abandoned the next day. Every indulgence had been temporary, fleeting, a way to dazzle and distract. And me? I had been his final performance, the last act in a series of illusions designed to manipulate and control. The first-class flights, the champagne, the diamonds, they had been his tools, and now that I had fallen for them, they were gone. But the deeper I dug, the more dangerous it became. I found hints of legal maneuvering, contracts signed without my knowledge, debts accumulated in my name. The man who had flown me across continents in silk sheets and champagne was now trying to make me pay for it, literally. Financial ruin wasn't just an accident, it was intentional. I began to piece together his psychology. He wasn't just wealthy, he was theatrical, meticulous, a predator disguised as a prince. He understood human desire, knew how to exploit it, and used luxury as bait. My heart raced at the thought. The man I had trusted, laughed with, slept beside, had been planning my downfall all along. I also realized that he had been testing me, observing how I reacted to indulgence, to attention, to the thrill of excess. I had been a character in his game, a player unaware of the rules. And when he determined I was hooked, emotionally, financially, he pulled the rug out from under me. The knowledge both terrified and empowered me. Terrified because I understood the depths of his deception. Empowered because I now had the map to his manipulations. I knew where the cracks were, where the lies hid, and where I could strike. And yet, as I delved further, I found something unexpected. Traces of his personal life, hidden in the receipts, the itineraries, and the shell accounts. Scattered mentions of other women, other indulgences, other victims, perhaps. The thought sent a chill down my spine. I wasn't the first, maybe not even the last. It became clear that the man who had flown me first class and then left me with nothing had built an empire of illusions, and each woman, each victim was a piece of a carefully constructed puzzle that no one else could see, except me now, staring at it with widening eyes and a tightening jaw. I knew then that my path forward would not be easy. I was chasing shadows across continents, through bank accounts, through temporary luxuries that vanished before they could be held. But I couldn't stop. Every discovery, every clue, every piece of evidence was a step closer to understanding the man who had destroyed me, and perhaps reclaiming what he had taken. And so I plunged deeper into the world of the rich and the reckless. I followed leads, tracked movements, spoke in whispers with insiders who had glimpsed his opulent but fleeting lifestyle. Every name, every place, every detail added to the tapestry of deceit he had woven around me. By the end of the week, I had a picture forming, one that was far darker, more dangerous, and more complicated than I could have imagined. The man who had promised me the world had been playing a game for years, and I had been both a pawn and a prize. But I was no longer just a victim. I had the knowledge, the determination, and a fire that wouldn't be extinguished. I would uncover every secret. I would expose every deception, and eventually, I would confront him. By the time I tracked him to his newest hideout, I knew I had to be careful. Every move I made, every step I took felt like walking on the edge of a razor. He wasn't just wealthy, he was strategic, meticulous, and utterly ruthless. The first-class flights, the yachts, the penthouses, they weren't just indulgences, they were traps, and I had walked right into them. I arrived at a villa on the Amalfi Coast, a structure of marble, glass, and gold accents that gleamed in the afternoon sun. The kind of place you dream about but know you'll never truly own. Limousines lined the driveway, and uniformed staff moved with precision, almost military in their timing. Every detail screamed power, wealth, untouchable status. I called his number one last time before confronting him. Silence. My chest tightened. The villa was a fortress, but I had pieces of information, hints from insiders, and enough determination to get me through the gilded gates. When he finally appeared, it was like stepping into the past. A man in a tailored suit, polished shoes, a watch flashing in the sunlight, and that same confident smile that had drawn me in before. Only now, I was not starstruck. I was furious, aware of the trap, aware of the ruin he had left. "I see you found me," he said, smoothly, as if he had expected me. His eyes flicked over me, not with love, not with concern, but with the detached appraisal of someone evaluating a game piece. "You left me with nothing," I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline pulsing through me. "Everything you promised, gone. The first-class flights, the champagne, the yachts. Do you even realize what you've done?" He laughed softly, the sound cutting like a knife. "I gave you experiences, moments, memories. Isn't that what matters?" "Moments?" I spat. "I gave you debt, shame, and betrayal. Luxury is useless when it's built on lies." He tilted his head, amused, still in control. "You misunderstand. I showed you the world because you asked for it. You enjoyed it, didn't you?" "I was deceived," I snapped. "Every gift, every flight, every jewel was a trap." His expression didn't change. That smile didn't falter. He was untouchable, untarnished by my fury. The villa around us shimmered with wealth, chandeliers that could light a cathedral, gold-trimmed furniture, paintings worth millions. But every ounce of luxury felt like a mockery. I realized then that this world, the first-class flights, the yachts, the silk sheets, was never meant for me. It was meant for him, and I had been a spectator in his performance. "You think I care?" he said, finally, his voice low, dangerous. "I care about power, about control, and you made a perfect pawn." That word hit me like a punch. Pawn. Not a lover, not a partner, a piece on his board. Every kiss, every touch, every whispered promise, they had all been calculated moves to trap me. I left the villa that day, seething but alive. I realized then that confronting him directly wasn't enough. His world of luxury was a shield, a weapon. To fight him, I had to understand it, dismantle it, and turn it against him. I contacted the private investigator again, piecing together everything I knew with the new information from the Amalfi Coast. Each account, each transaction, each shell account slowly revealed a web of deceit more elaborate than I could have imagined. He had left me with nothing, yes, but in doing so, he had revealed cracks, vulnerabilities in his empire of illusions. That night, I sat in a modest hotel room, far from first-class flights and yachts, and went through the evidence again. Luxury was his trap, but it was also his weakness. Every shell company, every rented yacht, every private jet left a trail, and I was determined to follow it, step by step, until I understood him fully and found a way to reclaim what he had taken. Sleep eluded me. My mind raced with possibilities, strategies, and the faint spark of revenge. The man who had flown me across continents, who had wrapped me in silk sheets and champagne, who had promised me the world and left me in ruins, he would not get away with it. Luxury was his weapon, but now knowledge would be mine. Information, patience, and determination, these would be my first. After the confrontation at the Amalfi Coast Villa, I realized something crucial. He thrived on appearances. Luxury wasn't just indulgence, it was camouflage, a way to make his lies invisible. To take back control, I had to understand the machinery behind the wealth. The yachts, the penthouses, the first-class flights, they were all distractions, and I needed to see the gears turning beneath the glitter. Back in my small, temporary hotel, I spent hours poring over statements, receipts, emails, and flight logs. Each piece revealed more of the puzzle. He had used shell companies to buy and rent everything: jets, villas, even art. Every transaction was temporary, fleeting, designed to impress, never to endure. And every piece of paper, every invoice left a trace, a breadcrumb I could follow. I started connecting the dots. Hotels registered under fake names, private jets leased for days at astronomical sums, art galleries and jewelers complicit in creating the illusion of ownership. And through it all, one thread remained consistent: me. Every indulgence had been orchestrated to ensnare me emotionally and financially. I had been his most elaborate performance yet. The shock of it hit me in waves. How could someone be so meticulous, so cold, so calculating? And yet, despite the devastation, a flicker of exhilaration ran through me. For the first time since he left, I felt like I had the upper hand. I had knowledge, the most powerful weapon in any battle. I enlisted the help of my private investigator, feeding them every scrap of information. Together, we began to uncover a network of assets he thought were invisible. Luxury yachts anchored in secret marinas, villas under untraceable corporations, accounts in offshore banks. The man who had flaunted wealth as if it were limitless was not invincible. He had left traces, small but critical, and I was following them. Every discovery fueled my determination. I could see the patterns now. He liked to flaunt, to seduce, to dazzle, but he underestimated one thing: someone who had been burned, someone who now saw the world behind the velvet rope. Every glittering facade, every sparkling jewel, every first-class flight could now be used as a map to find him, to expose him, and to reclaim what was mine. The first breakthrough came unexpectedly. One of the shell companies he used to rent a villa in Monaco had left a minor legal trail. It wasn't much, just a name, a date, a transaction, but it was enough to trace the yacht he had used to impress me, enough to connect the dots to a private bank account. I felt a surge of power. For the first time since he left, I wasn't just reacting, I was acting. I was no longer the pawn, I was the player, and every step I took in the shadows of his empire brought me closer to the truth and to a confrontation he could never anticipate. But as I delved deeper, the stakes rose. I began to understand just how dangerous he was. The man who had left me in financial ruin had friends, connections, people who thrived on secrecy and intimidation. Every lead I followed came with a risk, exposure, threats, the possibility that he was already watching. Still, I couldn't stop. The thought of him, smug, untouchable, enjoying the chaos he had created, was unbearable. I wanted to dismantle the glittering illusion he had built, to strip away the silk, the diamonds, the yachts, until only the man remained. And then came the moment that changed everything. A call from an insider, someone who had worked for him but had grown tired of the lies, revealed a hidden account, a collection of funds, untouched, tied to assets he believed no one would ever discover. The luxury he flaunted had a skeleton beneath it, and I had found the key. I sat alone that night, staring at my laptop, the numbers blinking back at me. The man who had flown me first class, who had showered me with gifts and promises, had underestimated me completely. I wasn't just chasing shadows anymore. I was about to step into the light and make him face the consequences of everything he had done. The plan began to form. It would take patience, precision, and courage. I had to be careful. One misstep and everything I had uncovered would vanish, lost in his maze of deception. But I knew I could do it. I had no choice. He had taken everything from me once, but this time I would turn the tables. Luxury had been his weapon. Now it would be my map. Every yacht, every penthouse, every first-class flight, everything he had used to dazzle and trap me was a breadcrumb leading me closer to him. And when the time came, I would confront him not with anger, but with truth, evidence, and the power he thought he held alone. By the end of the week, I had a clearer picture of his empire, a network of wealth and deception sprawling across continents. And for the first time since he left, I felt a sense of hope. The man who had left me with nothing was not invincible. He had built his world on appearances, and appearances could crumble. The stage was set, the hunt was on, and I was no longer the victim. By now, I had become obsessed, not with revenge for the sake of anger, but with reclaiming my life. Every first-class flight, every yacht, every silk pillow he had used to ensnare me now served as a map, a breadcrumb trail that would lead me to the truth. Luxury had been his weapon. I was about to use it against him. The first breakthrough came when I traced one of his villas in the south of France. It was rented under yet another shell company, but thanks to my investigator, I uncovered the payment trail, the manager's logs, and a network of staff who had worked for him before. Slowly, the perfect picture of his deception began to emerge. I realized something terrifying and exhilarating. He had underestimated me. He thought that after leaving me with nothing, I would crumble. But every luxury, every indulgence, every step he had taken to trap me had left traces, and I was now following them meticulously. My first move was subtle. I began contacting people in his network, discreetly. Former employees, managers, accountants, they all had glimpses of the empire he had built on illusion. Each conversation revealed another layer of deceit. Yachts leased, villas rented, private jets chartered. Not a single thing truly his. Everything temporary, everything meant to impress, everything designed to trap, and every conversation brought me closer to the truth. The first confrontation of power came when I exposed a shell company linked to one of his villas to a lawyer. It was small, almost insignificant, but it sent a ripple through his financial world. I watched as accounts were frozen, transactions questioned, and the first threads of panic began to appear. The man who had left me with nothing was suddenly vulnerable. And yet, he remained confident. The next time I saw him, it was in a private art gallery in Monaco. He was wearing a tailored suit, his watch gleaming under the chandeliers, the air around him thick with the scent of expensive cologne. He smiled, as if nothing had changed. "You've been busy," he said smoothly, his eyes appraising, calculating. "I've been seeing the world you built," I replied, my voice steady. "Not the glitter you showed me, but the truth beneath it." He laughed softly, brushing it off. "And what truth is that?" "The truth that everything you flaunt is temporary, borrowed, fake, and the lies you built around it are unraveling," I said, feeling the power surge through me. "I know what you've done, and I'm taking it all back, step by step." For a moment, I saw something flicker in his eyes, a hint of unease, but he masked it quickly, replaced it with the same charming, untouchable smile. He underestimated me, just as he had underestimated every woman he had manipulated before. That night, I dug deeper. Luxury had been his language, and I was learning to speak it fluently. I traced yachts through port records, villas through maintenance logs, flights through booking systems. Every indulgence he had used to dazzle me was now a trail of breadcrumbs leading directly to him. And then came the subtle victories: frozen accounts, questioned invoices, managers nervously contacting him for clarification. The empire of illusion was beginning to crumble, and I felt a thrill I hadn't experienced in months. The man who had left me with nothing was starting to feel the consequences of his actions, not all at once, but in small, deliberate blows that would eventually bring him to his knees. I also learned something more personal: his carefully curated network of women, former girlfriends, mistresses, pawns in his game. They had all been dazzled by the luxury he presented, blinded by first-class indulgence, and discarded when he grew bored or needed to control them. I was not unique, except that I had survived, and I had gained the knowledge he never anticipated I would. And with knowledge comes power. I began planning my next moves carefully. I would not act recklessly. Every step would be precise, calculated, designed to expose him publicly, legally, and socially. Every indulgence, every jewel, every flight he had flaunted would become a weapon against him. That night, I sat alone, staring at the faint glow of city lights from my modest hotel. I realized that this was no longer just about reclaiming what he had stolen. This was about exposing the truth, I had been careful, patient, methodical. Every first-class flight, every yacht, every silk sheet he had used to trap me had become a map leading to his empire of illusions. And now the pieces were falling into place. The man who had left me with nothing was about to face the consequences of every lie, every betrayal, every moment of indulgence he had wielded as a weapon. The first sign of victory came unexpectedly. A high-profile investor he had relied on for offshore accounts received documents I had anonymously sent, revealing discrepancies in his financial dealings. The yacht he claimed to own outright? Leased. The villa in Monte Carlo? Under a shell company with irregular filings. The luxury he flaunted was a house of cards, and now, one by one, I was knocking them down. I watched him from a distance the next time I confronted him, at a gala in Monaco. The chandeliers sparkled, crystal glasses clinked, and the city's elite mingled around him, unaware of the storm approaching. He was laughing, the perfect picture of charm and confidence, but cracks were starting to show. His network of lawyers whispered frantically, emails flashed across devices, and his expression flickered briefly, revealing the unease he could no longer fully mask. I approached him, calm, poised, the opposite of the woman who had once swooned at his every word. "I hope you're enjoying the show," I said, my voice steady. He tilted his head, eyes narrowing. Show? What show? The one you built, I replied. The first-class flights, the yachts, the villas, all illusions. Every piece traced, every lie documented, and now the world is watching. For a split second, I saw panic. He had always relied on charm, on distraction, on luxury to control perception. But luxury could no longer protect him. Every person who had admired him now questioned him. Every transaction I had traced had been exposed to people with the power to act. The gala continued around us, oblivious to the quiet storm brewing at its center. I felt a rush, equal parts fear and exhilaration. The man who had left me with nothing was now vulnerable in ways he had never imagined. And the best part? He didn't know what was coming next. The first domino fell with a phone call. A major bank froze several of his accounts, citing irregular activity. One by one, lawyers, investors, and business partners began questioning him. The empire he had flaunted, first-class flights, yachts, villas, diamonds, was unraveling, and I was the unseen hand guiding it. But the most satisfying moment was personal. I confronted him privately, in a suite that rivaled any penthouse he had ever flaunted. He was tense, his usual charm nowhere to be found. "You've gone too far," he said, voice low, dangerous. "I've gone far enough to reclaim what you stole. Not just my life, my dignity, and my finances, but the truth. Every woman you've deceived, every lie you've told, the luxury you used as a weapon is now your prison." He laughed, bitterly this time. "You think you can control this? You're just one woman. One woman who finally sees your world for what it is. One woman who won't be silenced. And one woman who will make sure the world knows exactly who you are." In the days that followed, the collapse accelerated. Luxury properties repossessed, shell companies investigated, accounts frozen, and public whispers turning into headlines. Every first-class flight, every yacht, every diamond bracelet he had used to dazzle and manipulate me became evidence of deceit. And with each revelation, the man who had once seemed untouchable began to crumble. I had reclaimed what was mine, not just materially, but emotionally. The power he had held over me, the control, the fear, was gone. I had turned his world of indulgence into a trap, and he was caught within it. As I watched him from a distance, defeated, the glittering city around him now a stage for his downfall, I realized something profound. Luxury had been a tool of deception, but knowledge and persistence were weapons far stronger. He had left me with nothing, but in rebuilding, uncovering, and exposing him, I had gained everything. The man who flew me first class, who promised me the world, who left me in ruin, he was finally powerless. And for the first time in months, I felt free. When it was finally over, I expected to feel victorious. I didn't. There was no parade, no applause, no moment where the world stopped and said, "You survived something terrible." Instead, there was silence. The kind of silence that settles in after chaos leaves. The kind that forces you to sit with yourself and ask questions you avoided for a long time. I stood alone in a small apartment I had rented under my own name. No marble floors, no silk sheets, no champagne chilling in crystal buckets, just plain walls, a secondhand couch, and a single window that looked out onto an ordinary street. And somehow, it felt safer than any penthouse ever had. The man who once flew me first class was gone from my life, not dramatically, not loudly, just erased. His name stopped appearing in emails, his number went dead, his image faded from headlines as newer scandals replaced him. People asked me if he was punished enough, if he suffered the way I did, but that wasn't the question that kept me up at night. What haunted me was something quieter. How easily I had confused luxury with love, how quickly I had believed that being chosen meant being valued, how I ignored my own instincts because the champagne kept flowing and the promises sounded expensive. He didn't just take my money, he took my sense of reality for a while. There were days I still reached for things that weren't there, a concierge number, a credit card that no longer worked, a life where someone else handled everything so I wouldn't have to think. That was the hardest part to admit. I liked not thinking. Luxury had given me permission to stop listening to myself, and losing it forced me to hear my own voice again, slowly, painfully, honestly. I rebuilt my life in ways no one could photograph or envy. I learned how to read contracts, how to say no without explaining myself, how to sit at a dinner table without needing someone else to impress the room. I learned that silence can be protection, that simplicity can be power, that love doesn't arrive with receipts. Sometimes, late at night, I still remember the way the city looked from 30,000 feet, the way first class felt like proof that I had finally made it. But then I remember the bill that came later, the fear, the emptiness, and I realized something important. He flew me first class, but he never took me anywhere real. Everything real came after he left. The strength, the clarity, the woman who no longer mistakes shine for safety. If you're listening to this and wondering whether the luxury, the attention, the gifts are worth ignoring that quiet voice inside you, please hear me. Nothing that costs your peace is free. And sometimes losing everything is the only way to finally own yourself. I didn't win because he fell. I won because I stood back up. And this time, I didn't need a first-class ticket to get there.